Hello and welcome to Pregnancy in Preparation. Today I'm with Patrick Hauser, the founder of fatherstobe.org. Patrick, tell us a little bit about what you're doing and what inspired you to start this project of yours.
Well, I've been involved in pregnancy and birth for, I guess, since the birth of my own children. And it was the birth of my first son, which was a traumatic event for all three of us. That then led us into an inquiry into ourselves to see, what are the elements that comprise birth and pregnancy and who we become. And began studying pre and perinatal psychology just on our own, reading and such, and it was very early days, mid-late 70s, and learned more about the in-uterine environment and what the baby experiences, and indeed what we all experienced, because we all lived in the body of a woman for 9 months.
Yeah.
And not many people pause and think about that, but it's actual. And then we all had our own birth experience, and then, the nurturing and everything from then on. So it was between the birth of our first child and our second child that we sort of had an awakening and realized the crucialness of this time. And then we went on to create the first water birth in the United States, which was 1980. My son Jeremy is now 28. And it was a miracle. We created it at home. We had an attached garage that I turned into a water birthing room with a portable jacuzzi and 300 gallons of distilled water and just the right amount of salt. And you couldn't go to Google and say, how do you do this? It hadn't been done.
Yeah.
So we had a little team of support people that we met several times to process and make sure everyone was going to feel safe with this, because that's what it was about. It wasn't about the water. It was about how do we best support the mother and the baby. What can we do? What's the optimum?
Yeah.
And in our being and through our research and even in our meditations, we knew that this would be as good as it could be. And so we got very clear ourselves. We also got clear of the first birth emotionally. We did very specific work on that, so that we were, there was a healing from that birth. And so we didn't bring that with us to the second birth, because that's one of the things we learned, that you tend to bring those things with you unless you don't. And so it was a miraculous event. It was just beautiful. I received my son underwater, and it was just precious.
Wow.
And we filmed it, and had a still camera, and we got 4 minutes of filming. It all happened so fast. The first birth was a 36-hour labor. This one was 90 minutes. So fortunately, the water was already warm. So it was miraculous. And then over the years, we came to England then in 1982 and did a lecture tour, and some media, Daily Mail did an article and all of that.
Right.
And then went to France and then to the Soviet Union. And it was very early days, and nobody in England had done a water birth before. And so people were kind of, wow, they had been hearing about Michel le Dain in France, but he hadn't been here, hadn't been doing anything yet. So it was rather miraculous. And then over the years, I've worked as a counselor and a therapist and a coach, and have worked with couples and in and out of the field, usually having a business life going on, and then on the other side doing something in the form of pregnancy, birth, or natural health and healing.
Right. So this was your passion, and then you had
a something to pay the rent, And then it was 2.5 years ago that it dawned on me that I was up in a retreat, and my colleague Elmer Postal, who I work in Fathers to Be with, we were in this morning meeting group of supervisors, and it actually came out of his mouth first that one day he might like to work with expectant dads. Now, at this time, he was a very new father. I think he had a 1-year-old at that time.
Right.
And so it was very fresh, and I'm a grandfather.
Yeah.
So it was very fresh for him. But when those came across out of his lips, every cell in my body woke up. I went like, boom! Life purpose has arrived, and I'm ready.
Wow.
I've been working for 59 years getting ready.
Or 58 at that time, I guess. And so I came home from the West Country, and I went to Google. Google, you put your finger on the pulse of the world. This is how you learn how society views things, through Google.
Right.
So I went to Google, I put in fathers to be. It came back, whoops, you must be mistaken. Do you mean mothers to be? There was no social reference for fathers to be 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
I was like, in one moment, I was ecstatic. I jumped up out of my chair and then I wept. It was like, oh boy, oh my God. You know, there's that big a void. There's this black hole where fathers ought to be.
Yeah.
And indeed where fathers are. But in social consciousness, where fathers are held, which was nowhere. Because there was no resonance. There was nothing coming back.
Yeah.
You know? So it was fascinating. And so we sat down, Elmer and I sat down and designed a 2-day course, 14-hour workshop for dads, A to Z, on how to prepare for pregnancy, birth, and early fatherhood. Our focus is the first 18 months of life, more or less, you know, from conception on. And so we sat down and designed this course, and then we set about to try and deliver it. Well, we couldn't find a single dad, you know. It's like, you can find a pregnant woman by throwing a cat, but you can't find a pregnant dad. Try to identify one, you know.
Yeah.
One, they're very private about it, and two, they're not visual about it, like a woman is, right?
Yeah.
And so we knew we'd had to go through the women to get to the men, you know, because you can find the pregnant women and there's generally a man somewhere nearby. And so our first success was getting 6 guys together on Saturday afternoon at a friend of ours' home who has a little training room in her home, and she does antenatal classes. And she did a couples class on a Wednesday evening or something, and she said, okay, all you guys show up here on Saturday afternoon, there's going to be a class for dads. And they went, oh, okay. You know, and we said it was free. You know, anything to get some guys in the room, you know, because how do you get over this? How do you develop some inertia? You know, how do you get over this thing, you know?
And so 6 guys showed up. It was brilliant. When they walked in the room, I looked at Elmer and I said, do you feel that? He said, 6 fathers just walked in the room. Not 6 men, 6 fathers. It was palpable, the difference.
Right.
And I've done men's work. I've led men's groups. I've been in men's groups. And, you know, there was no testosterone entering the room. It wasn't about that. You know, it was about these men with a passion for what they're about to become.
Wow.
You know, and how can they best embrace that? How can they feel innocent in it? How can they feel safe in it? How can they be free in it? How can they give all of themselves in it? And how can they leave behind their past? Because one of the elements that we deal with is, how were you fathered? Because guess what? For 18 or 25 or however many years, we were all in fathering school.
Yeah.
Whether he was in the home or not in the home, that was still giving us a message. And how he was in the home, if he was in the home, that was giving us a very strong message about how to be as a father. Even if we rejected every bit of it, even if half of it was crap, you know, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
All of that was training. All of that is going in there. It's becoming part of our psyche as to how we're then going to respond. Because what happens as fatherhood approaches, the default setting is how you were raised. It tends, just like a computer will. Yeah, the computer will go back to that original setting. And now, of course, there's another original setting, which is who we are as a human being, as an innocent, call it child of God, you know. But in between is a whole lot of baggage oftentimes. And so what we do then is help men to explore that. And not with any deep psychological process, just a little awareness, just a little taking a look, just a little having a choice. It's amazing what choice is. You know, truly in our life, the only options we really have in life is the choice about what we're thinking. You know, we don't have a choice if the sun's coming up or not. We don't have a choice what the government's going to do. We don't have a choice about the electric bill. We don't have a choice about all sorts of things. Getting a flat tire on the car. Those are not all choices we made. Those are all just how life unfolds. What we can choose is how we think about it. So we can choose how we think about being a parent. We can choose how we think about our partner who's getting this swollen belly and going through all these emotional things, and we're friggin' terrified, you know? We don't know what to do with this. It's happening to her, it's not happening to me, but by golly, I feel like it's happening to me. And guess what? It is happening to you. You know, it's once removed from your physiology, but indeed you're actually having physiological responses as well. A man will have hormonal responses to his partner's pregnancy. Smaller doses than the wife is having, but he will still have them. And so understanding that, most men don't understand that they're going to have an emotional experience until someone says catch. You know, would that I could awaken that in them sooner and prepare them for that moment. Because lots and lots of dads at that moment, you know, that moment of exit and entry, just become a puddle of emotions. And
I've seen it.
As well they should. You've seen it and you've experienced it.
Absolutely.